Starting my 4th year of service here at Fox Valley Lutheran High School. I know we saw a lot of you, it seems like years ago, but it was just months ago, the Future Freshman Night that we had back in April. And some parents asked if this would be the same as that. There will be a little bit of overlap with kind of the overarching stuff that I'll talk about for a few minutes. Then after that, it will be more the meat of the school day with things like technology from Mr. Alan Nolte, student handbook, things like that from Mr. Voss as well. And then, depending on when we end, then we have all the returning student parents coming back, and then Mr. Voss will highlight a few things that are brand new to everybody. So you can see that on the agenda. One misprint on the agenda from 7:05 to 7:15, that should say my name and Mr. Voss, not Mr. Nolte. So again, thank you for coming. I've asked a few parents as they have come in, how is the year going? I got everything from awesome, great, down to a good. And I haven't talked to all of you, so if there's some junkies out there or horrible or anything like that, go talk to Mr. Voss after the event. No, we pray that your year is getting off to a good start. We do realize that many of you parents are not new parents to FVL, you just have a new student this year. So some of this stuff might be repeats because you've been here for a while, or maybe you had one graduate last year. In any case, thank you very, very much for being here. It's a joy to serve you. So that you don't, for those note-taker type people out there, I'm one of those. If you would like this PowerPoint just emailed to you as a PDF, I'll give you a minute to scratch down Mrs. Knowles' email address, and if you request that of her, she'll just send it right to you, and then you'll have that. We take our mission very, very seriously. I don't do too many opening presentations without highlighting that. I think if any organization loses its North Star and loses its purpose for why it exists, I think all kinds of things can happen that make any organization go haywire, no matter what its mission is, not just in the ministry or education world, business world, nonprofit, healthcare. What's the mission of the organization? And ours is directly drawn from God's Word, founded on the gospel, that our Savior Jesus came, He suffered, He died, and He rose all for us. And that's why we have this school. That's why we do mission work. It's why we have our congregations. It's why you're raising your kids in the Lord. And we look at ourselves as assistants to that end, and certainly not a replacement to that. It's kind of hard to read, but our new theme for the year is stand firm in Jesus. 1 Corinthians 15, 57 to 58. But thanks be to God, He gives us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ. Therefore, my dear brothers and sisters, stand firm. Let nothing move you. Always give yourselves fully to the work of the Lord, because you know that your labor in the Lord is not in vain. So we'll break that theme into 9 parts for our chapel themes. We'll talk about it in religion classes. That basically our students, your children, are already victors in Christ. They've already won. They already have the prize secured by Jesus' work. And what does that mean for them, for how they carry out their lives, how they fulfill their responsibilities, how they handle disappointment, how they handle success, and all those things that go with that. And just a quick note, that stand firm, and I learned from a pastor, I don't know the Greek and Hebrew, but they do, and they say that stand firm has a picture of not being pushed or pulled, that the things that can push us off of that rock are the temptations and the things like that, and there can also be the stresses that pull us off of that rock. So it's just, our friends in Houston and in the Caribbean right now would probably appreciate this metaphor very much. And we had a number of prayers this week for Hurricane Harvey impacted people, and now Irma is cranking. As we know, we have a number of our sister churches and schools along with millions of people. But that picture of standing firm through the storms of life. A few years from now, your kids are going to be either in a college lecture hall or in the workforce or the military. So you know this if you have kids that have already gone through high school. Maybe you have some up in college. All 3 of mine are in their 20s. My wife and I made plenty of mistakes along the way, but the Lord still blessed our Christian parenting, and there's no rule book for this, so you establish principles as parents. We covered some of this last year, so I'm going to be quick here before I pass it off to the other three gentlemen. It's really fun watching freshmen. You could take that a lot of ways. Hunting for their lockers, forgetting their locker combinations, where they should sit at lunch, and all those things. And those of you who have freshmen and transfer students, you probably face that nervousness with them. But all of a sudden, a day or two go by, and then they're walking around like they own the place because they have it all figured out. They know their route, and they got their locker combo done. They know how to do everything. It's just fun to see them gain that confidence of just how the day runs within a day or two. It's really fun to see that. And so they're growing in their independence, and they enjoy that, and they should. That doesn't mean they are independent, because they're still under your roof and you're still parenting them and on top of them and giving them guidelines and rules and consequences. But in just a few years, they will be, for the most part, independent. And so parenting really through all the stages in life, how do we get them from point A to B to C to D and so on? So the next 4 years or fewer, if you have transfer students, children, how do we help them do that? First thing, we want to help them be their own advocates. And what that means is when they have an issue or a concern, a complaint, a challenge, that we help equip them to go to the teacher, the coach, the parents, or wherever the issue is, that they can learn on their own or get support from mom and dad in doing that. Thinking long-term versus the short-term is really, really important. And that's where emotions can be a blessing, but they can also get in the way of long-term logical good because of the heat of the moment issue, whatever that might be. And you know this, and I know this, because we all lived through these years of ages 14 to 18. And you can probably think back, as I know I can, decisions, emotions, disappointments, victories, challenges, all those things, and how they kind of help shape us and what we learn from those things. So we want to help them do all that. And leading with the head and not necessarily putting the heart in charge. Our encouragement, because our number one mission at this school, no matter what happens, we want your kids in heaven. That's our number one concern. Our focus at this school is spiritual as job one, and then after that, everything falls into place. Their career path, whether they go into the armed forces, traditional college, the workforce, serving in their communities, their congregations, whatever they do, whatever the Lord has as their calling, are going to be wonderful things. The book of Ephesians says that God has prepared good works in advance for us to do. And we remind them they're not here by chance. They're brought to be by a creating, loving, wonderful God who has written their names in the book of life in heaven because Jesus paid for their sins. So the spiritual first, and then everything follows, kind of that metaphor of getting that big rock in the jar first and everything else follows. So home devotions and regular worship and things like that. Again, having 3 kids, my oldest daughter missed a $10,000 scholarship by I don't remember if it was 0.01 or 0.02 for her final cumulative GPA. And then her first year in college, she got enough of a grade to get that for the next year. So I know as a parent that grades do matter, especially when it comes to scholarship dollars and things like that, but philosophically we would say, well, that's important. Just so you know, our philosophy as educators, we really want to emphasize the learning process, the effort, the work ethic, and what they put into something, and things aren't just handed to them. And the kids who say, well, is this right, or what's the answer? No, we want them to learn to investigate and collaborate and get help from teachers, maybe parents. About junior year, I couldn't help my kids with homework anymore. That's why I'm a principal and not a teacher. I'm not smart enough to be a teacher, I guess. Reading the materials, we send a ton of stuff home. That app that we have is a really good, if you're a iPhone, Android user, you can download that FVL News app, and there's a lot of stuff that gets pushed out. What we don't want to do is bombard you from a zillion different angles, but there's just so much stuff. And the more activities your kids are in, the more information you get sent. So we're trying to consolidate that better for you and just ask you to try to keep track as much as you can, and then ask, call in, email if you have any questions. Goal setting, finding balance in life. Sometimes a disappointment leads to a different blessing somewhere else. Conflict, struggle, and disappointment are part of life this side of heaven, and many would say if we don't go through struggle, we can't grow. If everything was just easy all the time, but in the moment we don't like it, even as adults, and our kids don't either. A phrase I heard years ago that I love, my wife and I had to remember this a lot. Our job as parents is to help prepare them for the path ahead and not to try to clean out the path to make easy sailing for them, because that will hurt them in the long run. They won't be able to handle it. But as parents, and again from experience, we don't want to see them go through those things, so we're tempted to kind of jump in and fix or whatever, and that's an art to know when to jump in, when to hold back, and things like that. And that's something that you can network with each other or talk with us, and we can help with that. All of your kids are beautifully gifted, wonderfully gifted by God, and He's given those gifts for them to serve and use. And so helping them discover those gifts over these next few years. Some gifts they have, they don't realize they have. It's really fun when a student, junior year, maybe doesn't make a team or something, and then they end up doing this and they fall in love with that. And I never knew I had that ability or love. It's really good to get involved. We have tons of things to get involved in. Communicate. If something's on your heart or mind that you need to tell someone about, do that, please. Otherwise, we don't know and we can't help. We're very thankful for you. We're very thankful for your kids. We love them very, very much in Christ. We see ourselves as your partners. We pray for you regularly, and we ask for your prayers for the work that we do in supporting you as well. I'll turn over to Mr. Ginnerberg. He has a couple of slides for the guidance world, and we'll keep our agenda moving.
Hi, everyone. The first slide gives you my contact information. Feel free to call me or email me with your questions. My teaching schedule begins at 10, so before 10 would be a good time to get me, or after 1. And I look forward to working with your student. On the next slide, that would be the responsibilities for all 3 of our counselors. You can see I'm responsible for your student in their freshman and sophomore year. Mr. Sharon and Mrs. Gilmet have them during the junior and senior year, based on their last name. You'll be getting an overview of the parts of FVL's website tonight, but for guidance issues, there is a guidance tab, and everything is listed there for you. So please make use of that, or give me a call. The second item is Naviance. Naviance is a program that we brought in a couple of years ago, and we have the students take career assessments, personality assessments. They build a resume. They plan for college. They do all of these things with this program, and it's very well done. The way that we get the freshmen and the newer students in is I will come and visit Old Testament class, and we will get them all set up. And they should know how to log in within, between the middle of October is when I make that first visit. Time to Volunteer is the next one. That is our volunteer program that we use. Just one disclaimer, the most hours that you can use for a single activity is 25 hours. That's a question we commonly get. But we'll be doing that in Old Testament classes too. Volunteering isn't really required necessarily, but colleges are looking at it more and more as something that they want to see. And then as far as academic assistance, we have the planner that will be talked about later. Really, if there's any questions about academics at all, give me a call, and I will either handle it myself or put you into the proper channel. And I'll be around later on tonight to also talk about things. Mr. Voss.
Good evening, everybody. I was listening to the radio, and they had a comment or a question. They were saying it was for parents. It was parents knowing what you know now, and you're starting back at what would you do differently when you're parenting. The number one answer was to be more consistent. We discussed that at a faculty level, because one of the things that we heard from you actually was the hope or the wish that the faculty would be more consistent about everything from grades to discipline to dress code. So I thought it was quite interesting when they're talking to parents, what would you do differently? The number one answer was be more consistent. So there's my tidbit of a little fatherly, grandfatherly advice for you. No charge this time. I'm going to talk about student life, and some of these things are the same, and then we'll get a few things that are undifferent. Some of you already know things that we're going to talk about, but it's good review. If you are going to have, if your child is sick, so there's something going on and they cannot be here right away, what we want you to do is call the school as soon as possible. After you do that, we have real-time attendance, so that means if you have your app out, you can go to your child and you could see, if you see a T first hour, that means they were tardy. If you see an X, they weren't there first hour. So that real-time attendance goes all the way through our day. So what we want you to do in that real time, we want to make it real time. So call the front office, and you're going to talk to Mrs. Peterson. What we would like you to do then after that is, I'm going to turn around. If it's before hours, you're going to be prompted to go to a certain place, and then you just leave the message. What we'd like you to do afterwards then is send a note or send an email, and you send it to attendance@fvelhs.org. So there's a two-part thing. Call us immediately, and then we start the process of attendance. So if they're going to be gone all day, Mrs. Peterson will have that attendance done right away. Teachers will know first hour, oh, she's gone. It's already taken care of. The excuse is there. And then we want you to do the follow-up thing just to have a second, just make sure that everything is done properly. Okay, it says a detention will be given to students with whom we haven't received a parental note. We'd like to do that within 3 days. Quite honestly, I haven't done that since we started this program. It's never happened, largely because of you parents doing the right thing. So if your child is sick, call it in and then follow it up with the email or with the message. If you know that your son or daughter is going to be gone and there's a lot of legitimate reasons for them to be gone, then we'd like you to fill out this pre-planned form. There's a copy of it right there. Your son or daughter can pick one up in the office. You can also download it at home, and then they can take it in and take care of this. So this is if there's an ortho appointment, a doctor's appointment, if you're going to go on a family vacation, if you're going to go hunting, if whatever the absence might be. Now, according to the planner, we have certain things that are excused absences. We have family absences, and if you're sick, if you have a doctor's appointment, if there's a funeral or a big family event, some of them may be unexcused, but if they are unexcused, there wouldn't be a penalty for it. So they're just categorized that way. So if you notice where the arrow is there, the student's going to fill this out. They're going to go to their teachers and say, I'm going to be gone at this time. The teacher on the bottom will write down any assignments that they might have. The top half, they're going to tear off and they're going to turn that into the office. Pre-planned, we would like to get at least 24 hours before. Most of you know way in advance for doctor's appointments, things like that. As soon as you can do it, if they can go through this hoop and get this done, Mrs. Peterson can get that all set and ready. So earlier is definitely better. We told this to the students in orientation time. If a student is late, the first thing we want them to do is come to the front office. We have a closed campus, so that means all of the doors are going to be locked by 8:15. So if you're dropping them off after 8:15, drop them off at the tower entrance. They're instructed to come to the office. When they get to the office, they will give the excuse to Mrs. Peterson. She will give them a purple pass, and they will take that to their first hour class. If we don't have that purple pass, we don't know where your child is. That means Mrs. Peterson, and nobody's called, Mrs. Peterson will start calling you. Because remember, we have that real-time attendance, and Mrs. Peterson is very good at kind of sniffing this out and making sure we know where your child is, and so also you know where your child is. So it's very important. They'll tell you, I have to go to the office, so drop them off. They'll pick up this slip. We mentioned that. Okay, next. All of these things that I'm referencing are part of the student handbook, which you can see online. Also, your child has one of those. It's the planner handbook. Attendance is obviously very important. Mr. Granberg was talking about grade point averages for 7 semesters, 8 semesters down the road. Well, attendance is very important too. It's state law that they have to go to school. We have determined, we have certain benchmarks of attendance where we start taking action. So if your child gets 10 absences in any class in a semester, the administration will start going into action. That means we'll be talking. We'll determine eligibility. If they're out for a co-curricular, we may take them out of that co-curricular or have certain stipulations about that, because if they're not in class, how can they do that? For seniors, it's a little bit different. For juniors and seniors, the building passes, we take that privilege away. And we may require after that 10th absence that there'd be a doctor's excuse on anything else coming. Now, they're extenuating circumstances, and each one, these are the general rules, and each one will be done on an individual basis. Okay, next. Okay. Raise your hand if you know what a tardy is. Raise your hand if you were tardy to this meeting. Yes, I caught a few of you back there. We still do tardies. If you're not on time, you're late, you're tardy. We try to be, remember that, what's the number one thing you want to become as a parent? More consistent. We tell the teachers they have to be in class when that tone rings. Some teachers I tell the kids, you know what the teacher wants as far as tardies. If they're in a lab and they need you there early and you have to go, you have to play that game a little bit. So be early. And it's been wonderful. We're still in that early time where it's 2 minutes to go before 8 o'clock and the hallway is almost quiet, especially the freshman hallway. After a break, it's so obvious. All the freshmen are in their classes and the upperclassmen are going, this is great, we can go down the halls and there's no problem. But tardies, we don't want to get in the habit of getting those. For some of you that have been here, it's the same way. On the 8th tardy of a semester class, you'll get a detention. On 16th tardy, it's a double whammy. If it gets to the next marker to 24, then we probably would have talked already before, but by rule, that would be an in-school suspension. And at the semester, it starts over. You control that. You can motivate people and have them be consistent. It's a very important thing. Those of you that you follow the news and you saw in Green Bay at a junior high, a teacher resigns. Why? Because she was bullied. She didn't feel safe. We obviously want your children to feel safe, and we'll do everything possibly we can to make sure that they are safe. So bullying, there's different forms, there's different ways. I think you understand it. When I talk to your son or daughter in orientation, I just said, if you're being bullied, you need to have certain things in your toolbox so that you can do something about it. You talk to that person and you explain exactly how it makes you feel. The best way to stop bullying, though, is within the student body, that they have each other's back, that they watch, they understand. it becomes very obvious. And I think so far, the first couple of weeks, it's been great. We've seen that where students have been helping each other. Now, in the course of the year, that's going to change. So it has to be reported. We're not going to stand for it. Our police liaison officer will not either, especially when it gets to any type of cyberbullying. So unfortunately, the devil works extremely hard, triple hard in within the halls of this school. So are we immune to this? Absolutely not. But we will address it. We address it with the students also. How many of you are familiar with the dress code? You all need to be familiar with the dress code, especially for girls, fathers. You need to be very aware of the dress code. The dress code we haven't changed in the last 6-7 years. I know when some of you guys were in school, you couldn't wear jeans and blah, 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 blah. But that has changed. So you can take a look. We have some key words up there: modesty and good taste. And in orientation, I told the kids, your idea of modesty and good taste and my idea are two different things. I win. Consistency. How do we enforce the dress code? Well, as I talk to them, especially, well, what's a dress code violation? Most of them are going to involve girls. Too short, too tight, too low. And they know that. And I told the girls, I said, don't put especially male teachers in the position where they have to talk to you and they have to say what you're wearing is inappropriate. Because that's part of the inconsistency. It makes it very difficult. Fortunately, I have no problem talking to them about that, so I will. But dads, that's where you come in. You need to know what your daughter's wearing, especially as they walk out the door and what they might change into when they get to school. Make sure you're aware of that, please. We'd like to get any dress code violation fixed as soon as possible. If that means borrowing something from somebody else, we'll do that. If it means calling you and saying you got to bring something in for them, that might happen. Hopefully it won't. Let's see. With guys, we don't get a lot of dress code violations. Maybe some holes in the jeans, and maybe if it's kind of not, maybe they wore the jeans that they were wearing while they were working on their car, cleanliness. But otherwise, actually, honestly, dress code has not been an issue the last couple of years. Phones. You all have them, so do they. Our phones right now, they can be on them at all times. There are certain places where they absolutely cannot use them. This is one of those places. It's right up on the screen as they come in. Turn those off. During the day, in between classes, they can do that, and they do. And they're walking the hallways like this, and I'm still waiting for the first big bang. I'd make sure they're okay, but then I would quietly laugh and wow. So what we don't want to do is, though, have them go off during class time. And if they do, 75% of the time it's from you. And I know, what was that? Who's calling it? It's my mom. So you can do that, but just make sure they have it on silent. And I know you can't control that, but there's that consistency thing. Talk about that when they go, put it on mute, please. If the cell phone does go off, the teacher is just going to put out the hand, take the cell phone. They'll give it to me. I give it back at the end of the day. And that's the only consequence. And it doesn't happen very often. Because if you lose your phone first or second set and you have to live that whole day without a phone, so they've been great about it so far. Locker rooms, obviously we don't want them in there, especially with the camera feature. Okay, we're good. Student handbook, this is Matthew 18. Mr. Granberg talked about this. This is where you need to be very consistent, but you can't. You cannot be the helicopter mom or helicopter dad. When you need to be, then do that. Remember, Mr. Granberg said there's that fine line. This is where you earn those big bucks that you get for being a parent. You have to be able to distinguish that, because you have to let your son or daughter fight their own battles first. Not alone, but first. Make them take care of that. So if we have 620 in school, 620 students, and with all the faculty and staff, do you think there's ever going to be a personality conflict? Yes, there is. So what happens next is that what makes that Christian character stronger. So we try to make it into a learning situation. So you can see the line, and it's just Matthew 18. Disciplinary actions that we do have, we have these things. Now, I know you're going to say your son or daughter will never get any of those things, and you're right. I can say with 100% accuracy, your kids behave much better here than they do at home. So I don't know if you need this kind of stuff at home, but take that. If there's going to be an infraction, if there's a detention, and there may happen, dress code, could be a tardy detention, we'll get to that later. But if they get a detention, number one, it's not the end of the world. Number two, you will get a letter from me, and it'll explain what the infraction was, and I will assign a date. And actually, this year, I'm going to go to, your child and I are going to sit down, and we're going to pick the date when they're going to serve. Detentions are served on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday from 3:30 to 4:30. They get to spend some quality time with me. All right? Then you can just see the rest as it goes. Probation is a possibility. Suspension is a possibility. And we would be talking long before we got to those two stages, if there is indeed a real problem. And then this is the due process that we follow. Any type of, there would be an expulsion hearing, we don't do that, the Board of Regents does. Okay, as Mr. Granberg said, I'll be around all evening, and if you have any specific questions, I'd be happy to take time and we'll talk it through. Mr. Nolte.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mr. Alan Nolte. I'm the curriculum director at the high school. And with the few minutes we have left before we take a short break, I'd like to highlight a few things that are more technology related. Most of them are ways to communicate with you about things going on with your son or daughter here at the school. The FVL website is probably the best go-to place online to be able to find any information about things we've shared with you this evening, including things like the student handbook, any links to anything else that your students and you as parents would have access to be able to find and to search for things that they're going to be able to do. The FVL website has a bunch of links that you'll be able to find. Please follow them. If you have any questions, you can certainly contact our front office. Skyward Family Access, for those of you who have had a student here at FVL in the past, you know this well. For those of you who are new parents, your son or daughter has already been trained in on how to access this. This information was given to you in your folder when you had your home visit. This gives you the ability to be able to access things like attendance, like grades, even lunch account balance throughout the course of the year. It also is a great place for you to be able to find contact information for teachers that your son or daughter would have. When you go to a particular student into their grade book and you take a look at not only grades but missing assignments, you'll also see listed on the left-hand side a link, the name of the teacher. You click on that link, it will automatically pull up your email program on your computer or on your smartphone, and then you can send something directly to that teacher. In addition, and this is very helpful for us, On Family Access, you have the ability to update your contact information at any time. This is particularly important when we need to send out important information, like once the weather gets colder and we might have delays or even cancellations due to snow or other types of things. We use what's in our database on Family Access in order to communicate that information out. Whether it's your email address or your telephone number, even a mobile number that you can receive a text on, it's important to put those things in here. You can also set your preferences for how you would like to receive that information so you're not getting inundated in multiple ways with that contact information. Naviance, as was mentioned by Mr. Ginnerberg before, is the portal that we use for students throughout their 4 years of high school to begin to transition from I'm going to high school to now I need to get serious about what I'm doing after high school. And I encourage you to be actively involved with your child in taking a look at what information they are building, collecting over the course of their 4 years at FVL here. It's a tool that is profoundly useful in a variety of different ways, and you'd be amazed at some of the resumes, if you will, of information and access to college applications, a track record of things that students will have for college applications, even for scholarships that are driven through Naviance. This is an excellent tool for you to be able to engage them with in that planning process as they get ready to move on beyond high school. The FVL News app has already been mentioned a couple of times. There are signs outside. Please do sign up for this. Even if you are not a smartphone person, there is a version of this linked on our website. And so you can click on it and do the regular computer screen version of this rather than the app part of it. This is a quick way to get to a variety of different information about what's going on at FVL even on a daily basis. Here are some of the things that are listed. It's supported in all browsers, both Apple Store and Google Play. Then, and this is something that last year was brand new for everyone, and so I shared all of this information with every single family that came for this evening. We passed this information out. We shared it with students in chapel. Our one-to-one program. We're now into our second year, and I would say for the most part we found that our first year was a good success. Our teachers are getting better and better at using those devices in creative ways to be able to support the learning going on in the classroom. So when we hand your son or daughter a piece of equipment that's worth $600+ when they first come in on orientation day, you can bet there are some things that we expect of them. And probably, I have a daughter who's a sophomore now, there's also some things as parents you're a little bit nervous about. I don't necessarily trust my own child to have this kind of thing at home, and now you're giving it to them. So here's the plan that we have. And 1 year in, we found a lot of success with this. First of all, you need to understand, and we communicate this with your students as well, that they need to have that laptop available every day at school. And we expect that in the evening they take it home in order to do whatever work is necessary on that device in order to accomplish the tasks for the students or for the teachers' assignments that have been given. They need to have that device fully charged every day. We don't provide a place for them to plug their device in for every single class period. The battery in that device is intended to last, hopefully, the entire day. And if it's not working properly, we need them to be trained to communicate with us so we can get those things addressed as quickly as possible. Those laptops are owned by us. It's incorporated into the cost of tuition. It's a privilege to have that device, not a right. This isn't something they get to walk around and say, I get to do whatever I want with this. It's intended for educational purposes. It is okay to use things like external mice and headphones. In fact, we encourage that. But your student is not allowed to install any software on that device without permission. Even if they say it's okay, it's like, oh, don't worry about it. They said it's all right. They have to ask permission to do it. Again, if you keep in mind it's for educational purposes primarily, that takes care of a lot of the conversation. Students are only allowed to use their device that has been assigned to them unless they're working with a partner on a project. It also must be secured in a spot that cannot be at risk for being stolen or being dropped, whatever it is, and that just depends on where they're at. Of course, in their locker, obviously a locked locker in the classroom, they can leave it there if a teacher gives them the okay. If they're traveling, this is a question we had come up a number of times last year with the sports team. They're allowed to leave it on the bus because we assume that that bus or van is going to be locked, going to be supervised. That's acceptable. But they should never leave it unattended. In fact, we do not let students set their laptops out in the commons when they come in for chapel. They must either bring it with them or leave it up in their locker. They're not allowed to leave it out because someone could very easily pick it up even accidentally and walk away with it, and then we run into issues. Charging the laptop, I already mentioned. There are opportunities for students, if their battery's running low, to be able to charge here at school. They're not allowed to do it typically in classrooms, not at lunch unless they use the charging station that we have down here in Commons. There's also one upstairs by our library windows. Again, long story short is they can't just simply leave it unattended. They can't plug it in the nearest outlet and walk away and come back to it later. It doesn't work that way. Any technical support is addressed through what we call our Academic Resource Center. It's our library space. Our students are trained to take their devices in if they have any questions, whether it's something that's not working or they don't understand or they can't get logged in, or, and some of you have already made contact with us maybe through your child, maybe even troubles logging into your wireless internet access at home with the device. And we do the best we can to troubleshoot. It's pretty difficult to try to diagnose, but we do the best we can. So if you have any issues, tell your child to bring it into the ARC and we'll take care of that as quickly as we possibly can. If things are not followed according to procedure policy, as an example, if they don't have it in a case and they're walking around from class to class, very easy to drop and to break or damage. Leave it alone or leave it at home and they needed it for class. Their battery wasn't charged like it should have been. They're using someone else's laptops, especially if they're trying to get away with not having had their own at school or using it for inappropriate reasons. Then the typical consequence we offer is a detention like we would for any other discipline issue, because it's just that. It is a discipline issue. Students are encouraged to try to avoid getting into the trap of having forgotten it. We give some opportunities, the charging I'd mentioned. They can rent a laptop for the day if they forget it at home, or even better yet, talk with the teacher in advance. Do I really need it for today? They can rent a case. Often that isn't an issue. Again, if there are any issues, even if it's accidentally broken, dropped, don't hide that from us, we tell our students. Tell us right away, and we'll get things addressed. We're thrilled to be able to offer this one-to-one program. There are many, many possibilities, and those only continue to expand each new year with this program, but also the responsibilities follow. So as is usual with any piece of technology, please be patient. Encourage your children to be patient with us as we work through these things. Their cooperation, your cooperation with our procedures and policies will help for us to be able to efficiently serve them and to make this a fruitful additional piece, part of their education as we move forward. With that, we are at about 6:47. One last highlight just for those of you who are new to the schedule thing. So you have a schedule in front of you. You picked it up out in the Commons. You can look down the list of periods 1 through 8. We'll go back through this in just a little bit as we invite returning parents in for a quick word or two before we send you off to your classes. If you look over to the right-hand side of the schedule, you'll see the room assignment. On the back side of the schedule, you'll see a map for the school. We'll also have teachers up in the hallways directing traffic if you're lost and you don't know where you need to go. The name of the course and the name of the teacher are also listed there for you. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Mr. Granberg.
I'll take that too. Thanks very much. I just want to circle back on a couple of things to clarify or add a couple of thoughts before we give you a stretch break here. You might have seen that phrase building pass, and if you're new to FVL, you may not know what that means. We allow juniors and seniors with parental permission, if they have a study hall scheduled first set or eighth set, they may arrive to school in time for second set, in other words, miss first, and they may leave after seventh set, in other words, miss eighth. A lot of our seniors have jobs that they can get to and so on. And so with parental permission, and they can keep that building pass as long as they remain eligible with academics and behavioral issues. So just a definition of terms for you there. Just a comment about dress code. This is my 30th year of being a principal, and this has never been solved. And of the many reasons I look forward to heaven, this would be one of them, that there will be no issues with dress code. There are so many philosophies and Kids want their individuality, and we respect that. Well, we make it really, really clear to students and parents. If we tell a young lady that what she has on, or a young man, that it doesn't match our code, we're not telling them that what they have on maybe isn't appropriate for a Christian young lady or man. It just doesn't match our code here. With having one child or two or three at home, it's much easier to match. With having 620, we need to have some measure or some standard, and we acknowledge that it becomes somewhat subjective and there's inconsistency. It's just very, very difficult. So we might tell a student, hey, if you would wear that on a Friday night on your own time, that's totally appropriate for a Christian young woman or man to wear. It just doesn't match our code here. So we're not, questioning their Christianity or thinking negatively of them as people for their fashion choices, but we just ask that if they work for UPS, they're wearing brown. They don't get to wear green. And there are many colleges and workplaces that have all kinds of guidelines about jewelry and tattoos and style of clothes. So, and that many of you deal with that. So we just want to make that clear that we don't mean to disrespect our kids and their desires for what they like to wear. We just ask for cooperation to stay really on the safe side of the line with what they wear. Really more for them than for us. Third thing I want to circle back to, Mr. Nolte highlighted this. It really is important that you keep your Skyward family access stuff updated with phone numbers and text messages, because you'll hear my lovely dulcet tones at 5:45 some January morning telling you that there's a no school day. I'm the only one on the planet that doesn't like those days. My wife is jumping for joy because she's a teacher, and I'm the one that's talking to 5 bus companies and 13 superintendents and trying to figure out, how is it over there, how is it over here. Anyway, we want you to get the message that we have a late start or that we have a no school day. Last year, at the end of the year, if you remember, there was a shooting south of us about a mile. We had to alert the parents that we were on a soft lockdown, which the Appleton Police Department recommended. All that meant for us was to run business as usual, but don't let anybody leave, and be really personally vigilant with anybody who wants to come in. One thing that also was not covered in the presentation, we've upgraded our crisis management plan as well. We've been getting ongoing training about the various crises that could hit really any school in today's day and age. So keep your information updated, please. And lastly, really stress to your young people to keep their academic lockers locked, their interscholastic lockers locked, their physical education lockers locked, because there is sin here, and when there's temptation, if there's a lock that's open, sometimes we have opposing players from other schools come and try to rifle through our stuff. Other times it's our own kids, and we have cameras all over, but we can't put cameras in locker rooms. And so when things get stolen, laptops, money, jewelry, you name it, it's always because the locker was not locked. And they would say, well, I'm in such a hurry between classes. Lock your locker. Lock your locker. Come get me, I'll walk you to class and excuse your tardy. Lock your locker. So if you can really stress that they do that, that will help a lot. Okay, those are some things I thought of as the other guys were presenting. It's 5 to 7. We have our returning parents coming in about 5 minutes. Feel free to take a stretch break. And we'll get you out of here by 7:15 for the rest of the evening. If you do need a restroom break now, you do have a couple minutes. It's right across the commons that way. We just ask you to be back in here by 7:05 or just hang and visit and stretch. Thanks for your attention so far.